From HomeServe, Greg Reed joins us. Welcome to CCW Digital on B2B IQ. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Download episodes on ccwdigital.com or through our app in iTunes, within the iTunes podcast app in Google Play or wherever you currently get your podcasts. First, some supporters to thank, and then Greg Reed. Here it is, the fully integrated cloud CX platform that you need to act smarter, respond faster, and be first in CX. Now you can turn innovation into value, scale up when you need, and add new capabilities whenever the situation demands it. One experience, a single unified solution for employees and customers. One cloud, a single cloud offering based on AWS public cloud technology. One path for migration to the CX1 platform. The fully integrated cloud customer experience platform from NICE, allowing you to be first in CX. Visit nice.com for more. Leaders responsible for operations, information technology, customer experience, contact centers, customer care, service and support are invited to register for a free CCW digital membership. Membership includes networking with 100,000 plus qualified industry professionals, quarterly executive research reports, product matchmaking, and more. Go to ccwdigital.com to join the community. That's ccwdigital.com.
Greg Reed, CEO, HomeServe.
So when you say HomeServe, it makes me think you might be from Pittsburgh?
No.
All right. Where are you from?
I'm from Delaware,
in
the U.S. originally.
Okay. All right.
In the U.K. for 18 years.
All right.
And then when you said, there is a HomeServe in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And there's HomeServes in, I think, about 16 countries now.
Okay.
I just look after the membership business in the U.K., which is the biggest part of the business.
Okay. You look after the membership business. Here's what I walked in. I was just telling you, I walked in kind of midway through your presentation, and you said, someone sat down with you. You said, if this happens, I'll give him CEO Greg. And I thought, oh, that's, I get it. He puts on a cap where he's a little bit more, kind of straightforward. But you actually are. The CEO is your title.
It is, yeah.
And as we get into this, we'll realize why my take was this can't be a CEO. This sounds like an insane person.
Yeah, I think you wouldn't be alone in that,
right?
Yeah.
So you're CEO of a specific aspect of the business. I want to make sure we have that right.
That's right. So I'm CEO of HomeServe Membership in the UK, which is a business. We've got about 2.5 million customers, approaching 3,500 staff now. We look after people's homes. We do 1.2 million repairs. 1 out of 10 people who own a home in the UK are my customer.
Okay. And plumbers, electricians, the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Plumbers, it's a crazy job we have because we are financial services, because it's insurance, which everyone loves, financial services, combined with tradesmen, which everyone else also loves. So we're at the nexus of a very interesting spot. Yeah. Which is why I think when we do it well, customers really appreciate it, because it's not something they see that often. Absolutely.
I was thinking about a relationship that I have with my telecommunications service provider, who I, over my entire lifetime, have allowed into my home and have made many sacrifices to make sure that this person can get into my home.
Yes.
And each time that this happens, I can't remember one time where I was satisfied with what happened.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, as someone that has a product, oh my goodness, what an opportunity here. I'm letting this person directly into my home. How much, of a difference could this person make?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that situation you described, isn't that what Kramer encountered in Seinfeld? Where,
oh, sure.
where he made the guy wait. So, yeah, people have, it is difficult to provide this type of service to customers, but I think the highest scores we get, the highest satisfaction scores we get are on the engineers themselves. Mm-hmm. So they get a 9.6 out of 10. Mm-hmm. So they do a fantastic job. The rest of it, making sure we get them there at the exact time the customer wants, things like that, it's a little more difficult than people probably think.
Sure, right. And maybe we'll get into how you do that, but the bigger picture, as you just stated, is the fact that your people are happy.
Yes. No, we have a very engaged staff, which I think in the service business sort of gets you that little bit extra. Mm-hmm. So inevitably, like you said you've experienced, things go wrong.
Yeah.
And if you have a situation where the people delivering the service understand what you're trying to do and really want to make it go right, they will fix it. They'll go above and beyond and do a little more than they're supposed to do to make sure it goes right, because they don't. One, they care about the customer, and then two, they care about the company. So they're worried about both sides versus just caring about themselves.
So we're at this inflection point in terms of corporate enterprise where what you're talking about seems like it makes sense. We have to pay attention to the customer experience, and by that we mean the employee experience. But we also have all of these metrics that show us that we shouldn't be spending money on that because it'll lose us money here. So there are basically two ways to go about it. Well, we can just make sure that we run it as efficient as a business as possible based on the metrics, or we can kind of go out on the customer experience ledge.
Yeah. I think that idea of becoming more efficient sort of in the value chain and going down deeper and sort of grinding out the vendors and negotiating hard with the staff and maybe being careful with the T's and C's with the customers is a very old way of doing things. And I think you maybe could get away with it, if that's the right word.
I think that's exactly the
15 years ago, when people really didn't have other choices, and also the average person didn't have a voice. Whereas now, love it or hate it, the internet and Twitter and things gives people an enormous platform to talk about things. So you really, as a company now, have to have a different standard. And what we've decided to do is, like the big companies that are nothing like us, so I'm not saying we're like them, but what Amazon and Google and Facebook and Apple and these companies do as far as creating value for customers and really seeing customer needs and fulfilling the needs, and then we'll figure out the other bits of it later.
Right.
But if we can find a way, Amazon's the best example of getting people hooked on this because they like it and it replaces something that isn't as good, then we'll figure out how to pay for it later.
Right.
That's basically what we've been trying to do the past 5 years or so. And it's gone all right. We go out and see our customers twice as much as we used to on the same policies because we've found all the reasons that we used to not go, which were legitimate. And we've changed the terms and conditions, and we've enhanced the product, and we've given the guys, new tools and a new attitude. And, we've seen good results from that. Customers will pay if they get better service.
Yeah.
Not all customers, but most people go, okay, that was good. I'll pay for that.
Yeah.
And then you have a little bit better for us, which is really critical because it's an annual product. You have a little bit better renewal rate.
So there's 2 points there. I guess I'll come back to the Amazonification of things and dive in on, again, here's a concept where you are knowingly and almost wantingly wanting to send these folks out, whereas you didn't have to before, in quotation marks. And it has now proven itself to actually make you more money. How can you make that argument to somebody that does not have your same point of view, who says, well, why would you ever, open yourself up for that if if you don't have to?
Yeah. Well, I think it obviously just depends on the product, but I think anything that renews where people have choices, you really need to be careful about not doing what they need to get done. And so for us in fixing things in the home, to me, when I asked, well, if we don't go do it, who's going to do it? And then they would say, well, they would call a local guy to do it. I'd go, oh, game over for us. That's not great.
Yeah.
He'll tell them how wonderful he is and he'll undercut our prices. So it was really, I think it's a defensive play and one that makes sense. And I'm not saying do a bunch of stuff and not get paid for it. But what I am saying is if you do what you're supposed to do and you do it well and you don't find ways of getting out of doing it, then customers in general, people are good people. They will pay.
But Greg, you did do a bunch of stuff without getting paid for it. You trained how many technicians in CPR?
That's right, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess in that, when you think about that, it gives them a tool and a purpose. That's really important. You have the stories where they actually get to save someone. But you do have, in a big company, we had the discussion with the legal and compliance guys and about opening ourselves up to a lawsuit if someone tries to save someone and it goes wrong. And it's those types of discussions that if you have a little bit of, something to you, you can actually say, well, I would rather end up in court trying to save someone's life than having one of my engineers watch someone die. It's a simple thing for me. And I say it all the time. We've got plenty of lawyers. So if that's what, if we're trying to help someone and something bad happens and it is, 2018 and people sue and
right.
Whatever, we got lawyers and we'll sort that. But I would rather that guy feel that, he didn't leave anything, that he gave his best and that he knew what to do. And the engineers are really appreciative of it.
And you've literally saved a few lives along the way.
Yeah.
And the, engineers are telling you that they appreciate it in your metrics, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think in our metrics, the engineers, I think that's a little part of what we do, the CPR thing. But I think the main thing with the engineers that we've tried to do is, I think in these large field forces, it's a bit like the Army, and there's a bit of command and control, and there's a little bit of, you can control your patch as long as, no one's there watching you, and you can kind of do it your way. I think what we've tried to do is really open up communication with the engineers, and particularly with the engineers and the senior management. Maybe some of the middle management are still stuck in the old days, but the senior management definitely. I send out an email to everyone in the company every Friday that I write. That's full of spelling errors and grammatical issues and my political views of what's going on in America and all types of things. So it's a real, pictures of my family, you name it, it goes out. And I had mentioned that, retention is something that's really a key focus for us. Mm-hmm. And one of the engineers sent me an email back that said, "Oh, I've got a retention idea. If we can have a phone call." And first off, I'm really proud that I work in a company where someone who works in a van, someplace East Anglia or something, has never met me, thinks I can just fire off an email to the CEO and it's going to be fine.
Right.
Second off, as a person and as a busy person, actually in my heart, I went, "Oh, good grief, what's this going to be?" And but I took the call, and he says to me something quite incredible. He says, "I'm out there, I'm fixing things for customers, I'm fixing boilers, and quite often they ask me, if I didn't have the insurance, how much would this have cost me?" And he said, and I give him the best guess. He said, "But I'm sure you know that or have some statistics. After the job is done, you should just send them an email or a letter saying this would have cost you this."
Wow.
I know, and I went, holy moly.
That's such a great idea.
It is a great idea. And I went into my loyalty guys and my retention guys, and I said, what am I paying you guys for? This guy's out there, and but that's that thing. If you open up that dialogue with the staff, and there are no barriers, and sure, you get some ideas that aren't good, and you get sometimes the same old ideas, and you're like, yep, thought of that, and you politely handle it. But then sometimes you get a gem like that, which is something we're absolutely doing, and we do 1.2 million repairs a year. So, that guy's going to drive a lot of activity through that one idea.
So that one idea, of course, is going to probably save you money, make you even more money.
Sure,
and
it should help retention, I think.
Yeah, and we can understand why in retrospect, why that call checked the box.
Yeah.
Right? You mentioned a couple times that you're very approachable. It's just straight time management. How do you kind of ensure that you are still being the CEO while you're on the phone with the guy in the van?
Yeah, no, and I think that is something that is very important to me. And you have to make sure that you're very disciplined, I think. Mm-hmm. I have a unique situation in that I work in England, but the family lives up here in Scotland. Mm-hmm. And so I do have a long work week. And I think, I remember seeing someone speak once, and they said, there's no work-life balance, there's only passion. And I think that's really true. And I think, when I need to be passionate about my family, I am, and I'm there for them. But I'm really, it's not hard to get me engaged with work because I love what I'm doing. I love that we're helping customers, and I love the staff. Yeah. And so I will have very, very long days. I've had 2,500 one-to-ones, they estimate, with the staff now. Yeah. Half-hour sessions. Anyone in the company can see me anytime. And we sort of, we pepper that in, and we get about 15 of those a week. And then around that, I've got to put the normal board meetings and my one-to-ones with my directs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you just sort of time manage your way through things. It's why today, being asked to come here, I was happy to come here and speak, but I can't stay all day. And I've got to go
right,
to our lead site and see the management there. And it's just sort of, that's the give and take. But doesn't mean, I think it would have been easy for me to go, no, I can't go there today and speak. But I went because I think we have a good story to tell, and I'm proud of the staff, and I like to tell people about it.
And so we are here in Scotland at CCW Europe, which is in Glasgow.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, how I'm supposed to pronounce it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, when did you come over to the UK?
I came to the UK in year 2000 with my wife, Melissa, who's also American and from Delaware like me. And I went to work for, I did, at the time, I came over as an expat for MBNA, which is a credit card bank.
Sure.
And we lived in Chester for a number of years until Bank of America decided that wasn't important business for them anymore.
Yeah.
And then I went and worked for a company called RBS, which is a big bank here in the UK.
Sure. Royal Bank of Scotland.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, and I was lured with a line of help rebuild a once great bank. I think it was more difficult once you got inside it, not because they were bad people, but because I think at that point wasn't quite healthy enough to fix itself. It was sort of in a zombie mode, I would describe it.
Well, you have to be able to be in a position to engage the change.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And even though I was fairly senior there, it was still, a global organization that had probably shrunk but kept all the global stuff.
Got it.
So it was really difficult. You had a lot of decision makers who were removed from what you were trying to do, and particularly around your people and how you could engage with them. So when HomeServe called and said that they'd had these regulatory issues and that there was a bit of a fix-it job to do, and I was hired to be CMO at the time, that sounded really good to me because they said, we know you know how to do all the marketing stuff because you've done that for two big, huge UK brands. But what we really want is we want to have a go at, creating a more customer-focused culture, which we know from your MBNA days was central to that company, and we've heard a lot of good things. Once they convinced me that, it wasn't just sort of lip service and that was really going to be a thing, I told my wife it was difficult because we just moved to Scotland. I said, great, I'm going to go back and work in England. She said, good luck to you. You know where we'll be.
Right.
And and I haven't looked back, and it's been one of the best decisions I ever made. And at the time, the thing I worried about was I was a retail banker. That's what I knew how to do.
Right.
That was my skill set. And so it was like, oh, how am I going to do in this insurance and plumbing and all that? And then I found out a whole different set of skills that maybe weren't as apparent.
What were some of those skills? Can you just name them off?
I think the thing that when people say Greg really focuses on the staff, and then people say things like, I don't have time to do it, I approach it a different way. It's the first thing I do. So when I get up in the morning, I worry about the staff and I worry about the customers. And then if I get them in the right spots and they have the right tools to do their jobs and their heads are in the right places and I've made their lives easy so they can make it easy for the customers, then I do all the other stuff that I think CEOs do. Now, I think that's controversial. And sometimes people want it to go the other way. And there are days where it does have to go the other way.
Right.
And I have to think about funding and all these things
Sure.
and underwriting rates and all that stuff. And that's a real part of my reality. But I always think about those things in the lens of the customer. And then when I think about the customer, I always think about that staff. And so I think from a things that I didn't know, I'm a natural introvert.
Right.
And so leading a company this size was probably not something anyone expected. But I found a way to do it, which is why the one-to-ones and things like that are important to me, because it's my way of doing it. And so I'm not trying to be someone else's CEO. I'm trying to be the best one I can be.
And you do skip levels, and do you just sit down one-on-one with anybody, everybody?
Yeah, 2,500 one-to-ones. I mean, that is everybody. That is anybody in a company. It's an open invitation.
Over the course of a year, or?
That's in the 5 years. So I've done about 500 a year.
Right.
And generally we do 10 or 15 a week. So I'm going to our site in Leeds today, and I know that I've got four one-to-ones with frontline staff. Over
the past 5 years, can you give us maybe a few of the aha moments from some of those one-on-ones?
Yeah, I think I guess the biggest moments that you find are when staff says to you, I don't understand why we're doing this, and I can remember one when someone said, I said, why, what do you mean? He said, well, every morning, people who have changed their address the night before because they had a claim, and even though it's the house that's supposed to be insured, we'll change the address and go. We're not going to argue about it. And then the next morning, this person would call those customers and do security and change the address. Well, this person said to me, it's an awkward conversation with the customer because they're like, well, you know where I live because you just sent a van here last night. And so someone just misunderstood the rules, and so for me, it's very easy for me to cut through and go, well, that's insane.
Right.
And then just actually talk to the right people and go, we're not doing that anymore. And then everyone goes, oh, is that why we were doing that? But in the big companies, there's, just people busying themselves. So you do find things like that. And I think customer first, which I talked about in there, is there's a lot of aha moments in that, but not ever someone brings an idea in and you go, aha. It's when it comes 20 times and it's something that is being done right, but the staff have to give a message to the customer that's difficult.
Right.
So you feel for the staff and then you feel for the customer and then you start thinking, how could we do this differently? And I'll give you an example. In the world of boiler cover, with British Gas being the biggest provider here in the UK with about 4 million customers, there reaches a point where you could pay for 20 years, and there reaches a point where they basically say, it's not fixable, you need a new boiler. And I think you would expect to get a new boiler, but you don't. They just go, that's it, game's over, buy yourself a boiler. And customers are like, well, I've been paying for all these years. Now, from a regulatory perspective, from a T's and C's perspective, that's what the policy says, and they haven't paid to get a new boiler, and you're paid to fix it, and if you can't fix it, you can't fix it. But we kept getting these stories coming into Customer First where we were basically then buying boilers for usually vulnerable older customers who were very upset and couldn't figure out how to get another boiler because they're quite expensive. And then we basically said, well, why don't we just change the policy and they'll cost more, but we'll always give a boiler. It sounds obvious, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It also sounds preferred. I prefer that.
Yeah, but it is it's not like everyone went, well, now we're going to ditch BG. It's a difficult thing to market on, but it is the right thing to do.
Right.
And so you get those moments where you just sort of, you change things in the product, but not because some marketing person has figured it out and not because some sort of compliance person has said you need to do it, but really because the staff are really listening to the customers and they're going, this just doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah.
And then
doesn't add up.
Yeah,
literally.
and if you hear it a couple of times, you go, yeah, well, who could fix that? Well, we could. So what are we going to do about it? And then you look at a way to fix it.
Yeah.
And so I think those types of things are the things that sit out for me. I mean, I think there are other, probably more nuanced aha moments when I learn about certain managers and I learn their styles, and I don't overreact to that. But it is good information for me to know.
Well, yeah, so we got customer first there, but what are we talking about here as far as, because you mentioned kind of senior level management gets it, guys in the field get it, guys and gals in the field, but the middle management, that this is always the case, no matter the size of the company, no matter what the, product or service is, middle management is always kind of last.
Yeah. No, I think they do a very difficult job, and they are trying to manage their little bit of the world as best they can. And then when you have somebody, swanning around like me and just sort of saying, hey, let's do this, it really, really makes things difficult for them. And I understand that. And things that they really care about, average handling time and things like that, I don't care about at all. And they know that. So we sort of run into these,
Well, why do they care about it and you don't, CEO Greg?
Well, because in my mind, it all rolls up. And it's fine. And I want that customer to spend, that staff member to spend the right amount of time.
Right.
Now they know, and this is where you have that healthy tension. They know if they can't get through the calls, then there'll be a point where customers are waiting, and I don't want that either.
Right.
Right. So they've got to sort of manage my expectation that somehow, and you do get there, the staff know when to spend the time, and they know when not to spend the time.
Right.
Which is difficult. Same thing with the engineers. We're trialing a thing now where there's no incentive for some of our engineers to get the work done, which sounds crazy.
Right.
They're just incentivized to go out and do a good job. And if it takes longer, do it.
Yeah.
And that's the way I want things to be. Now, I know financially we have to be really careful with that because we can't have 1,200 guys doing one job a day when they're used to doing quite a few. So you got to figure it out. But I also don't want to stand up, like I've done in there and say, well, I want you to, if the customer, has a letterbox that's broken and you're a man with tools and they ask you to fix it, I want you to fix it. and then he says, well, then I won't get to another job, and then, I won't do as well on my incentive.
Right.
So that's where we've got to sort of balance it out and just hope that, and I don't think it's a hope, I think it's more reality that we've got really professional engineers and that they will do a good job because that's what they do.
Right.
And that they will know when to spend the time and when not to spend the time. But
and that's your CEO cap as well, in making sure that they understand where the bumpers are and what, fix this mailbox, maybe don't fix that mailbox. And
and I think as the CEO, the other thing I would have done on that is, my boss thought it was a brilliant idea. The chief operating officer thinks it's a brilliant idea, but we're not rushing. We are testing and figuring it out and, doing it the right way. But it is where we want to end up in the future.
On our way out here, let's get back to the Amazonification of everything, right?
Okay,
because I can understand why retailers would be very focused on every single thing that Amazon is doing.
Yeah.
For a guy that runs an insurance company who has the most plumbers and electricians, in a given area, how can you justify using them as a benchmark?
Well, I guess the popular one that people use is Uber.
Okay,
right?
Sure.
So there's no reason at all that local cab guys couldn't have done everything that Uber does, right? They're more qualified. They've got better cars. They just needed the app, and they could have done it. But instead, they went down this route of, we do what we do, and people need us.
Right.
Which is very dangerous in today's world.
Yeah.
And then someone came along, and whether it, where it all ends up, I don't know. But they sort of said, you know what? People don't want to wait for you to drive by. They want you to come to them.
Yeah.
They don't want you to refuse to take credit cards or to charge you £1 to take a credit card. They just want you to take credit cards.
Right.
So all these things, all these problems that people didn't know they had that Uber solved, same thing with Amazon. Amazon, I know they're not the cheapest. I don't care, because I just like the idea, okay, something's popped into my head. Now I'm here in Glasgow. I live in Edinburgh.
Right.
Something's popped into my head. I need that. Okay, I'll get that delivered. That'll be there when I get home, and that sorts it. And so I think this idea of adding value, which I think is the core, you think about where they started and to where they are now. And people go, oh, that's sort of, they're expanding and all that. I don't think they are. I think they're customers who are using them. They're just adding value. And so for us, I think it's a very similar concept. And the easiest way that was initially was just actually go out and do the jobs. Don't have reasons to not do them. And I can remember sitting in a meeting with my boss, Martin, once when we were talking to the operations director at the time, and he was saying, well, we can't fix noisy pipes. And Martin was saying, why not? And he was just kind of saying it was hard. He's like, so are you saying it's hard to fix noisy pipes? Or are you saying we can't fix noisy pipes?
Right.
And then we went basically through all the things that we were telling customers no when they called, which were, they hadn't paid from, they weren't in the terms and conditions, just about how could we say right. And then we designed a new product and just started saying, yeah, let's do these things.
Yeah.
And I think that's the easiest thing. And then there's another one, which is, just the general things that Amazon has done to retailers, doing them to ourselves. So we have a product called LeakBot, which is about the size of a garage door opener, and you clip it onto the pipe where your water comes into your house, and it tells you if you have a leak in your house. And it's a big deal in the world because in the UK anyway, the largest part of your home insurance premium is water damage.
Right.
It's that leak that happens in the ceiling. Your ceiling falls in. They've got to come redecorate your dining room.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this little thing for a minimal amount of money clips on, and it can tell you if you have a drip. And so to us, that's sort of an Amazon moment, because we know before they have an issue that they have an issue.
Right.
And, we can send them a message to say, we'll come sort the issue before you have an issue. Now, that's an expansion of what we do, and it's actually hard to find these leaks because if you don't know where they are, it's not a piece of cake.
Right.
But, that's what we want to do. Another thing that Martin had said a few years ago that I thought was really cool was he said, it would be great if we had a product where we never went and fixed anything. Everything just worked.
Right.
Which, scary. How are we going to charge for that? But it is sort of, can you move in that direction? And LeakBot's away. We've got electronic boiler monitors, which, during the big freeze we had recently, we were able to read the fault codes on the boilers and send people messages to say, here's how you get your boiler going again, instead of freezing and waiting for our guy to turn up.
Right.
If you just get some boiling water and do this and that, you can sort yourself out. And we were able do that through the electronics that come back into us and send it out proactively to customers. And probably some of them in the middle of the night didn't even know. They got up in the morning before they were called and went, oh, wait a minute, something's up. And then claiming online. When we first started 5 years ago, someone said, there's no way that if someone's got like water running through the ceiling, they're going to make a claim online. Well, I'll tell you what, they will. And so we do about 10% of our claims online. So it's 100,000. 100,000s of no one would do it. But I think it's because of Uber and it's because of Amazon, of people, if the app says it'll work, it'll work.
Right.
And they just have a go. And to be honest, I love my people, I love my staff, but a lot of the times the electronic way is a little cleaner, and it does get to a great result.
Sure.
And so I think that's why when we look at those guys and sort of adding value and making things easier, that's where new products that are similar to what we do are helpful, and then just finding ways to make what we do easier is helpful as well.
Right. How can we get to that next step? Maybe doing things a little bit differently, but still within the scope of who we are.
Yeah, the companies like. These businesses that I run, British Gas and my business and Corgi and a few others in the UK are very big, well-known businesses.
Sure.
And the product is really well-known. In the US and other places, not as well-known.
Right.
And it's sort of just like, how do we take these products that people sort of know and love and just find a better way to do them and to make them work a little more effectively?
I love it.
Yeah.
Final 3 questions. I'll tell you what they are, and I'll ask you them in order.
Okay.
What's most surprised you at work? What's most surprised you in life? And on the soundtrack of your life, one track, one song that's got to be on there. But first things first, what's most surprised you at work along the way? We didn't get a chance to really talk about your career too much, but certainly talked about how you run your work life.
Yeah. I think what's surprised me about work, and it is something about me, is there isn't one way to do something. I think when you're starting out in your career and you look at execs and you look at people running the company and you think, okay, I need to be like that or I need to do that. What I have found is that, and I think I get this out of my staff too, is if everyone is just the best version of themselves, and really, if you know what you do wrong and you try to make it not be an issue, not fix it, because you're not going to fix it. I'm not going to fix my issues.
Right.
But then the things that I do well, so talking to people, understanding their issues, empathizing with them, making their lives easier, making those hard decisions like I talked about in the other room that the HR and other people go, ooh, but knowing in my heart that if I make that decision, the dividends it will pay later will be enormous. And so I think that's the thing that's been the surprise thing they don't teach in business school and that you don't learn watching Dynasty growing up or anything.
And those hard decisions being, professionals just telling you, listen, this just doesn't make sense. And then, the numbers proving it out in the end type of thing.
I'll give you an example. When we gave all of our staff the most expensive policy that we have, which costs us about £500 a year in underwriting. Right. Just so that when they talk to customers, they would know what they're talking about.
Right.
Because they'd had the service. Now, when you add that up across thousands of staff, it's a 7-figure sort of idea.
Right.
And everyone's like, that's insane. And I'm like, no, it will make things so much better. And it does. It pays dividends because, the staff know exactly when the customers talk to them. And these kids, they don't have the money for a policy that big. That's a whole month's worth of take-home pay.
Sure.
And so to them, it's a huge benefit. Mm-hmm. And then also they know what they're doing. And so it's those types of things that people think are soft decisions that do pay huge dividends later down the road. Doesn't mean you have to give everything away, but you can sort of figure out what things do we need to give to make something better, to make it work better.
What's most surprised you in life?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know. I guess my life is a fairly unique, I think. And so I guess, so my wife, Melissa, and I have known each other for over 40 years. We were in the same class growing up.
Oh, wow.
Someone on Facebook the other day put a picture of someone and their spouse 7 years ago, and I said, I can do you better. And I sent him one from 42 years ago. And I think the thing that surprises me is that two people can start out in a small town, in Delaware, and kind of go on this big adventure in life and not lose track with home and not lose track with the family and not lose track with who they are, but also just have this wonderful, crazy little side adventure and go off. And, my daughter is in a pipe band. which is insane. And life is insane, that's happened. So I think that's the surprise, is that you don't, especially I think in America, even though, you set out with the American dream and things like that, there is sometimes a sort of, here's the prescribed path of what you're going to do.
Right.
And I guess what I prove is that, if you just do your best, have some fun, and then just take some chances, that you never know where you're going to end up.
That's good advice, just to anybody. It really is, no matter the country, right?
Yeah, it's a weird, you'll know the same thing. You thought your parents didn't know anything, when you were growing up, and
Sure.
you knew everything. And now, I'm at this age now where I'm like, oh God, it's all so clear now.
No, I remember actually kind of coming back from college and getting into the workforce, and I remember the aha moment of, oh, wait, there's maybe a couple of the most brilliant people that I've ever met, after a few short years of thinking, well, these people don't know anything about my parents.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And they really cared about me. So they were doing that for the right reasons.
That's it. Yeah,
that makes sense now.
Now I get it. Exactly.
Yeah.
On the soundtrack of your life, Greg.
Yeah.
One track, one song that's got to be on there.
Yeah, well, I like the song that I listen to a lot. And if you go and you find me on LinkedIn, I don't know if I could say this, but I'll say it anyway. I always tell people that one of the advice I can give them in life is to play it fucking loud. And I had the pleasure once of speaking at Free Trade Hall in Manchester, where Dylan, that's where he said that, when he was going electric and they were heckling him.
Right.
And, they did the whole Judas, and he said, I don't believe you. And then he turned around to the band.
Yeah.
And said those
Which
words.
was the band, by the way.
It was the band, yeah.
Right.
He turned around to the band.
Right.
And then he just said, play it fucking loud. And I love that song. And I went for a run today along the Clyde.
Are you talking about Maggie's Farm? Because I think it is Maggie's Farm that he says that.
No, it's like a Rolling Stone when he says it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
So and you can hear it very clearly. And I have that version, and I've listened to it this morning. And so that is definitely the one I like.
All right. So because I'm thinking of the Newport, folk festival,
I know, when they
play
hustle
Maggie's
there,
Farm first, and what you're saying is they go into
So if you go and listen in Free Trade Hall in Manchester, and he's playing like a Rolling Stone, and I'm sure you've heard the track before. But anyway, in the beginning they heckle him, and then he tells them to play it fucking loud, and then in the end they play "God Save the Queen." Is the end of the track.
Really?
It's a beautiful track, yeah.
Bob Dylan playing "God Save the Queen."
It's the end of it's the end. I don't know if he's playing it, but it's the end of the show, and it's what's playing.
Oh, it comes on
and so
afterwards.
He's probably walking out or something. I don't know.
And
but I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
they do heckle him in the beginning,
Yeah.
and he does get a thunderous round of applause by the end.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
And again, this would be, of course, the original "God Save the Queen," not necessarily the Sex Pistols' "God Save the Queen," right?
Absolutely, that's right.
Greg, really appreciate your time.
Sure, nice talking to you.
And there you have Greg Reed. Very much appreciate his time. Very much appreciate yours. Stay tuned.